Good afternoon. I'm going to give you an update on the current uh, long-awaited trial of the 2002 Bali bombings that took place on October 12th, 2002. This turned out to be the second most deadliest terrorist attack in the world after 9/11. And a lot of people don't know anything really about the Bali bombings because it didn't receive the national attention it does years later, like they do with the 1998 East Africa bombings or the 1992 World Trade Center bombing, and of course, 9/11. But this actually killed over 200 people, injured about 220 people. And it was carried out by members of Jemaah Islamiyah, which is basically a terrorist organization out of Indonesia that has links to Al Qaeda. And one such notorious individual, Ridwan Isamuddin, who goes by the name de Hambali, who currently is in Guantanamo Bay, being charged for various crimes, including this one. For a little bit of a summary, on October 12th, 2002, at about 11 p.m., a suicide bomber inside Paddy's pub, which is called Paddy's Irish Bar, which was a good local tourist spot for Australians, Irish, English people, detonated a bomb that was hidden in his backpack and caused the entire complex to fall on itself. And survivors actually witnessed, said later that the one thing they heard was a large blast. And the next thing they knew, they were on the ground and they saw the night sky because the roof was actually blown out. But a bigger explosion took place just about less than a minute later, where a white Mitsubishi van that had a complex of bombs inside the van blew up outside I forgot the name of that place, the Sari Club. Sorry, S-A-R-I, Sari Club. And it was a open air thatch roof bar, and it was located on the opposite of Paddy's bar. So they were both like on the side of the street. So now, when this happened, the entire block, which had the bar and the club, was completely engulfed in flames. And according to survivors, it looked like something out of a Dante's Inferno. And it happened during the busiest tourist periods of Kuta Beach. Kuta Beach is a urban village located in southern Bali, and since that area of Bali is so densely packed that it just destroyed residential and commercial properties. Cars were on fire, even like 3 blocks away, and it was a scene of complete devastation. And it happened during the night, so it was just unbelievable. The car bomb even left like a meter deep crater. It was just enormous. Many people had burned. Many people were burned victims, and it was just remarkable in its own right. Now, the suspects that were involved with this were a couple of people that had connections to a school run by an Imam. And these individuals are Imam Samudra, Amrozi Nurahizim, and Ali Gufan. But there were more individuals involved, and it was a lot of arrests that came out later. And basically, 3 of those people were actually executed for their involvement. Amrozi bin Urasman, Imam Samudra, and Huda bin Abdul Haq were all executed by firing squad on orders of the Indonesian courts. The problem with this bombing was that it was allegedly known beforehand by individuals who went to Indonesian authorities, but because these people were not considered reputable and had questionable backgrounds, they didn't know what to believe. But one guy in particular that was known to Indonesian authorities, even known to the CIA, was the cleric I was talking about, Abu Bakr Bashir. And I wrote an article about this bombing, and it was an article that I really took care to research on, because I always felt that this terrorist attack was something that is often underreported and only acknowledged when October 12th comes around, every October 12th. But even then, I mean, even the media doesn't give it its attention that it should. Now, there were other people involved, like Ali Imran and Mukhlas, that were arrested and were given life sentences. Ali Imran was given a life sentence. I think Mukhlas, who was suspected of converting Amrozi to militancy when he was young, because he's the older brother, I think he got life in prison. I'm not too sure, but they all were killed by firing squad. Now, many arrests were made, and there was a couple of people that were involved that are in Guantanamo, including one such individual named Ridwan Isamuddin. You've heard me say this name before. He is often known as Hambali. He is often described as the Osama bin Laden of Southeast Asia, or the Mad Bomber of Southeast Asia. He is a high-ranking member of Jemaah Islamiyah, and he actually was captured in 2003. In fact, almost a year to the date of the Bali bombings. He was caught in October 2003, and he had a fake, like, Spanish passport. He was captured with his girlfriend or his wife or something like that. He was wearing Western clothing, like jeans, a t-shirt, and a ball cap. And on his property, he had explosives, firearms, and he was captured after a 20-month reward was out for him. And he was actually tortured, as usual with a lot of these people, all of them, not a lot, all of them, they're tortured at CIA black sites. And this was this is coming from a 2010 Associated report that in March of 2004, Hambali was actually sent to black sites in Morocco. And then he was transferred to Bucharest in Romania. And actually, 2 years later, if I remember correctly, President Bush at the time confirmed that Hambali was being held at a CIA black site. Why I'm mentioning this, because Bush never mentions black sites ever before, and this is the first time. And it's also the first time he ever publicly mentions a detainee at a CIA black site. That's how important this guy is, Ridwan Isamuddin. His wife is in Malaysian custody, and actually he is in Guantanamo. And he basically was told, and this is coming from the 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report, he was told by his torturers, interrogators, that we can never let you out because the world will know what we have done to you. To me, this is the fascinating and horrifying part of this whole scenario of 9/11, the Bali bombings, the East Africa bombings, the Millennium Plot, is that everyone involved, almost everybody involved with these plots, were either they were captured, renditioned, detained, and tortured. And like I said before, any of these people who basically, even if they admitted the truth about what they did, it can never be used against them in a court of law because it was coerced under torture, under duress. And, you know, this is the unforgivable sin of the CIA. That's why I'm all for disbanding the CIA completely. It's a criminal organization. Yeah, there are good people that work there. They are. But the damage these people have done, we can't trust these people, and we can't trust the organization. Why did the State Department allow the CIA to torture these people? If they're fucking guilty, then show the evidence to show their guilt. Anyway, according to an Al Jazeera report, Guantanamo prosecution asked for 2025 date in Bali bombing trial, 23 years after the bombing. Military prosecutors at Guantanamo Bay have suggested that the full trial of Hambali, detained over attacks that killed hundreds in Indonesia, start in March of 2025, even though he and his two co-accused, have been in detention for 17 years. What's the wait? Why did it wait so long? Because the state knew, the CIA knew that these people were tortured, and no matter what evidence they gave under duress, can't be used against them because their defendants, their lawyers, are basically going to argue this. So what do they have as evidence? Amrozi is dead. Abu Bakr is dead. Nurisman is dead. The three alleged planners. Bashir was arrested and detained, released a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Hambali, an Indonesian whose real name is Ensep Nurjaman and Ridwan is Samudra, has been held at Guantanamo since 2006, along with his co-accused Malaysian nationals, Muhammad Nazir bin Lep, who is a big high-ranking member of Jemaah Islamiyah, and Muhammad Fariq bin Amin. Hambali is accused of involvement in the Bali bombings in 2002, which left more than 200 people dead, including United States citizens, and the JW Marriott Hotel attack in 2003 in Jakarta, in which 11 people died. The Indonesian lead counsel, James Hodge, told Al Jazeera his client was doing as good as can be considering this prolonged detention, and that the proceedings went as well as we could expect, and the judge and observers got to hear a lot about the problems we are facing. These problems include issues with interpreters, which Hodge said took up almost all of the third day of proceedings, as well as the testimony of Imam Samudra, one of the original masterminds of the Bali attack, who was executed in 2008 in Indonesia. Actually, Samudra, from his jail cell in 2003 and 4, 2004 and 5, basically was given like interviews, and foreign press were interviewing. He was taking claim to what he was doing. You can actually see them actually celebrating their own death sentence, and even during the trial, they're just celebrating what they've done. It's not like these people, like Imam Samudra or Nurisman or Abu Bakr, were basically not denying what they did. They were actually proud of what they did. This is what these Wahhabi groups like Al-Qaeda and Islamic State and Jemaah Islamiyah and Abu Sayyaf, the one thing they don't do is they don't deny what they do. They are more than willing to tell you even before it happens, which is the reason why, I find it to be unusual in the in the annals of true crime, the psychology of true crime, is that when you have sociopaths, and these people clearly are, or psychopaths or narcissists, you'll basically get a hint of not allowing their interrogators to know everything. In this case, when it comes to Wahhabi clerics and Wahhabi adherents, they are more than willing to tell you why they're doing what they're doing and tell you before they even happen. It's really rare to see the mind of a psychopath or a sociopath who are more than willing to allow for their plans to be known ahead of time. Anyway, according to Hodge, U.S. authorities failed to interview Samudra while he was still alive, and his testimony could have meant that his client was exonerated. Imam Samudra seemed to be the mastermind of the bombing and was available to be interviewed by the FBI, yet he wasn't. That's interesting. I wonder why. That is not the way crimes are supposed to be investigated. The authorities are supposed to look at all possibilities. In addition to the challenges around missing exculpatory witness testimony, Hodes said the lack of a speedy trial was troublesome to the defense team, which has always maintained Hambali's innocence. We are now 2 years post-Raymond and 20 years after the fact that the prosecution has still not complete with discovery, Hodes said. This is true. Now, when I wrote the article, it was alleged that Retribution Muden and Cap Nursman Hambali basically provided the materials of the bombs to these people, but it wasn't definitively known. It was alleged. Now, it's true. Samudra, Abu Bakr, and Ambrosi, they're all dead now. Okay. The ones alive are like Mukhlas and Ali Gufran and Bashir. And basically, what do they know, right? It's compartmentalized. They only know about certain issues like bringing the car or buying the car or buying the products to build the bomb, but they don't know about the master, like the planning and orchestrating of the bomb. One thing about these groups also too is they're compartmentalized. Not everybody's in the know. This way, one area of the operation is safe from the other area. The discovery process is when both sides exchange documents ahead of a trial, and usually the prosecution would provide such material to the defense as soon as a case begins. For Hambali, the official process to bring him to trial began in 2019, but is yet to be completed some 5 years later. During the most recent hearings, the prosecution asked for a trial date of March 2025, with the judge still to make a ruling. Hodes told Al Jazeera that the defense team was ready for trial, but added that more delays seemed likely. The existing military-appointed judge, Army Colonel Charles Pritchard, is due to be reassigned with a new judge and set to take over. It is problematic. If every time a judge gets up to speed in the case, they have to leave. Sounds just like 9/11. Why? Because the prosecution, which is the state, has no, I think, either little to no evidence, or that they know what evidence they had was coming from coercion of torture. If that's the case, they know two things. One, they have no case. Two, they would rather delay trials. This is the reason why they went to military proceedings, military tribunals. Why they did this is because if it was done in the States, every defendant has a right to a speedy trial. Now, as usual, the very best in the country, Carol Rosenberg of the New York Times, one of the few bright spots in the New York Times, has been keeping up. And I think she is, her and Dan Christensen of Florida Bulldog are just, and Mark Fallon are the best in the country when it comes to up-to-date information regarding what's going on in Guantanamo. Jemaah Islamiyah case at Guantanamo Bay. I will link this into the description. As you can see, up to date, as you can see, the case, the three prisoners at Guantanamo Bay are accused of terrorism, murder, and conspiracy and bombings in Indonesia 20 years ago as members of Jemaah Islamiyah, an extremist group founded in the 1980s with the goal of establishing an Islamic State in Southeast Asia. And it talks about the trial, in which, as I've read to you from Al Jazeera, prosecutors proposed to hold trial in 2025. Talks about the victims. A total of 213 people were killed in the attacks. The judge in the case, Captain Hayes Larson of the Navy, provided at least the first two hearings, starting with Raymond in August of 2021. And of course, the chief Guantanamo judge, Colonel Lanny Acosta Jr., took over as an intern. The defendants, Insap Nurjman, Retribution Muden, known as Hambali, Mohammed Nazir bin Lep, an accused lieutenant, and it talks about him. Mohammed Farid bin Amin, a bagman for the bombings as well. The prosecutors she goes into, the defense teams, the courtroom, and so on. And so these are the latest updates involving the Guantanamo trial case of the 2002 Bali bombing suspects. And as usual, I will link the stories at the bottom of the description. I also link my article that talks about the Bali bombings in the description. And as usual, if there are any updates relating to 9/11 and the terrorist events surrounding 9/11, I will always keep you up to date without bias and without prejudice. Have a good afternoon, everybody.